Hey everyone, welcome to Living Pieces. I'm your host, Ruth. So, on today's episode, we are going to be talking about self talk. We're going to be talking about positive and negative self talk. We're going to be talking about the different areas in which we talk to ourselves, and that sounds weird, talk to ourselves, but you know what I mean. Like, how is it that we speak to ourselves in certain situations, in certain areas of our lives? Because I think that self talk is very important. Maybe others don't, but I think it's a topic that should be talked about because they say that our thoughts, right? The words and the thoughts that goes through our minds, they govern the way that we feel, which governs our actions, which governs the outcome that we receive and that we get, right? So if you're talking to yourself negatively constantly, it will be very contradictory to expect a positive outcome from negative input, right? So I think it's important to talk about because I think many people talk to themselves and talk about certain situation in such a negative way and they're not even aware of it. And so again, this episode and like many of my episodes, they're here to bring awareness. They're here to shed light to areas that need more light on clearly, right? So so we're gonna talk about self-talk because it's important, you know? It's really, really important. And I just want to ask you, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you talk to yourself? Like, on a regular basis, do you say things like, I'm stupid, I always make mistakes, gosh, why do I keep failing? I'll never get it, I'm not good at it, it's not for me, I'm not the right fit, I'm just a failure. Do you ever like say things like that on a scale of 1 to 10? So, you know, I guess 1 being nah, like once every blue moon, and 10 being like all the time, like maybe 10 times during the day type of a thing, constantly, every minute or every hour. You might say a word or a phrase that's like, oh, why do I keep making mistakes? Or, do you know what I mean? Like something like that. Like, only you will really know. Others around you may identify it and may point it out and may be like, oh, you keep saying this, you keep saying that. But you spend the most time with yourself, right? You are with you always. So you will know the best. And it's about being honest with yourself. And yeah, because when you're honest with yourself, you can then truly help yourself. If you're not honest, then not much not much we can do. But so the thing with the way that we talk about ourselves and talk to ourselves is it's important because our mind is impressionable. um I don't think we get to an age where our mind just becomes less impressionable. Our mind doesn't like our subconscious mind especially doesn't really understand when you're talking to yourself in a funny way or you're being literal. So you might say I'm stupid or whatever, and they say I'm joking, I'm joking, I'm joking, but your mind's like I'm no, you're not joking, like. And even in jokes, what they say things like, in every joke there's an element of truth to it, right? So similarly, your mind is going to be like, well, I'm going to take the truth aspect and I'm going to run with that, you know. I'm going to run with that in the program, in the coding, and I'm going to be like, okay, cool, she's stupid, cool. So now if you're going with the thoughts governing the feelings, if you say you're stupid and you say that constantly, right? Because the key here is constantly. It's not like a once in a blue moon type thing. It's a constant thing. If you're constantly saying it, then you start to feel stupid. You might feel embarrassed, or you might feel awkward, or you might feel like, oh, I keep making mistakes. Goodness me, right? And so because you feel stupid, guess what? You continuously make more mistakes. And then the outcome is that everything's a mess. You make a mess of everything. So then what happens? You now begin this cycle where you then say, oh, see, I always make mistakes. I am always stupid. I always mess up. And then what happens? You start to you continuously feel stupid. You feel like you always make mistakes. You feel like a failure. And then your actions, you do silly things. And then you're like, oh, why did I do that? Why did I make that decision? Why did I go there instead of there? Why did I call them instead of them? Why did I do this? Because you've created a cycle. You create a narrative, a plot line, a storyline for yourself where it's like, this is what's going to continuously happen because this is how you continuously feel about yourself. Hence why having the awareness is key and important, because you can now do something about it. And many people, when they take a step back and they look at their life, it doesn't look the way that they want it to look. And they may wonder why. And then I have to ask them, well, how do you view yourself? How do you view life when things don't necessarily go your way? What is the first thing that you say to yourself, or the first thing that you say about the situation? What do you surround yourself by constantly? Because your environment is very, very important as well. Are you surrounded by other people who are talking negatively? Because when you do that, the energy, I guess, of that comes together and it's bigger. So now you got 2, 3, 10 people talking about a negative thing. That thing is going to be true. It's going to exist within your reality because that is what you're focusing on. Because as they say, whatever you focus on grows. So if you focus on the negativity and the negative way that you speak to yourself, that is what is going to grow. Right? So when we talk to ourselves, it's like we're speaking to a young child, right? Imagine all the negative things you say to yourself. Imagine that there's a child there and you're saying those things to them. Imagine that child hearing those words day in, day out, morning, night, all the time. Right? So, okay, and remember, like, this is a constant thing. Like, I'm talking about it I'm talking about it in a way of it being constant, not just a once in a while, every blue moon type thing. Right? So, of course, if you are listening to this and then you realize that, oh, wow, I do talk to myself negatively, that's the first step. You've just taken the first step, because the first step is awareness. You can't fix a problem if you're not aware of it. And when you think of like a car, for example, when you see the blinking lights, the lights are there as an indicator to tell you that there's something wrong with the car. So in your personal life, you may see certain things start to happen. You may get little wake-up calls and wake-up signs. Those things are telling you that, yo, you're not in alignment of who you should be right now. Yo, you keep talking negatively about yourself and these things keep happening. Or maybe you even feel it in your gut. You just feel twisted up about it. You feel all knotted up, like it just doesn't feel right. Those are indicators to tell you that, hey, the things that you're saying about yourself isn't helping you in this situation, in this scenario. We need to switch it up. Otherwise, we will continuously be in this cycle. And on top of that, if you don't do nothing about it, if you don't do nothing about that car, what's going to happen is going to break down completely. And so I think there are people out there who are breaking down, who are getting to their breaking point because they've ignored the warning signs for so long that now it's affecting them in such a detrimental way. And that's kind of what we see, right? So being aware is the first step. Just like how there are yellow cars around you all the time, but until you bring your attention and awareness to those yellow cars, that's when, you see them constantly. When it's pointed out by you or someone or something, you're bringing your attention to that car. So now you can't stop seeing those yellow cars everywhere. So the moment you become aware of how you speak to yourself, it's the moment that you continuously notice it. So now every day or every time you're like, oh, I'm saying it again. And now you can do something about it. Because before you couldn't, you weren't aware, but now you are. So yeah. And then when you become aware, you will also notice two things. You will notice the type of words that you say and the circumstances in which you say them. So we all have different areas where we may struggle with negative self-talk, right? But to break it down into like 7 areas, you have your identity area. So you, yourself, your mind, your body, your identity, who you are. That is the first area of, the areas, right? The second one is relationships. So your friends and your family. That's another area. The third one is work and finances. Money, things like that. The fourth one is assets. So this could be like personal items and personal belongings, things that you own. The fifth one is skills, hobbies, talents, yeah. The sixth one is your environment. So this could be home environment, social outings, those social life, those type of environments. And then other is the seventh one, basically. Anything else that is personal to you or that you do that hasn't been listed from the ones that I've mentioned. And you will probably have at least one category where you talk negatively about yourself or anything to do with you within those areas, right? And some people may have more, but you probably have at least one. So, for example, if we were to look at each category, say looking at identity, the first one, if you were someone that struggled in this area and you talk negatively about yourself, you may say things about your looks, about your body, about your height, your shape. You may talk about your mind and how you feel stupid, idiotic. You may say, I don't look right. I don't fit the standard. I don't fit the bill. And so you may talk about your identity in that way. I'm stupid. I'm dumb. I don't get it. That's one area. And those are some of the things that you may say. If we were to look in relationships, for example, you may say things like, nobody ever sticks around. Nobody cares about me. I'm always alone. No one likes me. I always find fake friends. I'm always friends with snakes and backstabbers and people who don't care. I always attract troubled people, I always attract narcissists. You may say things like that in terms of relationship and family, like family, like this person, my my family don't care about me. They don't love me. They always say abusive things to me, things like that, right? And for example, let's say finances, you may say things like, I'm broke. I'm always broke. I don't have enough money. I struggle with money. I struggle to make money. I struggle to keep money. I hate my job. I hate my manager. My manager always looks down on me. My business is failing. Nothing is working out for me, right? For your assets and like personal belongings, you may say, my things always break. I feel like I'm always having to replace things. I can never afford what I want. This dress or this item, this clothing, it looks stupid on me. I look and feel ridiculous, right? In environment, if that's the next category, if that's a category that you struggle with, you may say things like, I hate this area. I hate living in this house. This room is too small. There's no space. The color of the walls look rubbish. There's, everything is just crazy out here. There's no nice places near me. Everything is too far from me, right? So those are some things that you may say if those are some of the areas that you struggle with. You may say other things as well. You may say worse things, right? But that's just to kind of give you an example. And you may resonate with some of those, you may not, and that's okay, right? And you may say some of those things, you may say all of those things. You may say some of those things all the time. You may say some of those things once in a while. But it's just to kind of give you a gist and an idea and to kind of help you start jogging your own memory so that you can, or jogging helping you think about your day to day and actually be like, okay, cool. Yeah, like when I actually think about it and meditate on it, I actually do sometimes say these things about myself or whatnot. Now, please understand that some of these things are legitimate things to say, and it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to stop saying them. However, if you are constantly, being the literal theme of this episode, if you're constantly saying these things day in and day out, you are writing a narrative or a narrative for your life that is like, where, like we mentioned, whatever you focus on grows. That's the narrative that you're writing, essentially. So if you're constantly focusing on the negative aspects of these things, you will constantly see the negative aspects, and then you will find yourself in this loop of negativity where you're basically perpetuating this cycle constantly, right? And so having awareness doesn't stop these things from being true, but you are telling yourself that this is not what I necessarily want to focus on. So the awareness lets you know that this is what I have been focusing on, and now I want to change that. I don't want to constantly be doing that or living my life this way or saying these things about myself, right? And so now that you are aware of the things that you may say, you can now identify the area in which you may struggle the most with. Then the step 2 part of it, after the awareness, is to write down statements that counteracts the negative words, right? And it may take you some time to think about it, especially if it's not something that you're used to. But when you sit down and meditate on it, things will come to you, right? So if we were to take the topic or the category of identity, right? And if you constantly say something like, I hate the way I look, instead of saying that, you may write a statement that may say something like, my features are unique and my differences make me beautiful. But of course, saying that feels cheesy sometimes. And you may feel like that's a huge statement to say at first. Like, why would I say that? Right? So you can say something small like, I like the way I look, and you may not necessarily believe it at first, but just say it anyway. Because as you begin to say it, you slowly begin to feel it, which is, your thoughts govern your feelings. So if you say it frequently, then you will start to feel comfortable, and then you can start saying the bigger things or the cheesier things, like I am beautiful, I am wonderfully made, I am excellent, I am so talented at this, I love this house. Or if you don't necessarily love the house, you don't have to say I love the house, but you can find an aspect of the house that you love and say that. So if the space is too small, maybe you don't focus on that, but focus on something else that you like about the house. So if the space is small but the walls are nice, say I love the walls. You get, like, say something else. Don't necessarily lie to yourself, but find something. There has to be at least one thing that you like about that place that you can say, So that's how you kind of just do it. And then, then you start to say it over and over, and then you can start saying the bigger things, right? So then after step 2 of writing down the statements, put them in places where you will see. That's step 3, right? Write it on a sticky note and stick it on your vanity mirror if you have one, or in your bathroom, or in your door. Put them on your phone, like set reminders. You can create an alarm, and when the alarm pops up, those words, I am beautiful, or I am excellent, or I love my life, or whatever, will pop up, right? You can find lock screens and home screens that say the statements on there. So basically what you're doing is you are surrounding yourself with these words. You're surrounding your environment. You're immersing yourself with these things, so that it's kind of like all you think about. Because the formula is to change the way you think so that you can change the way you feel, which would then change your actions, which would then change your outcome and results, right? And so It's a thing that you constantly have to do. And if this is like maybe something you've never really done before, you can kind of set yourself a mini challenge where you're going to try and do this, like think of the words and the statements, pick the area up, then think of the words, and say these words to yourself or put them on sticky notes, surround yourself, surround your environment with these things and try and say it to yourself for a week and see how you feel after a week, right? Now, the disclaimer to that, though, is that for everyone, it will be different, right? And when you begin to say the words, it will feel awkward and weird at first because you're not used to it. You're so used to talking down upon yourself and to yourself that to want to change and to change those words is going to feel awkward, right? And you have to give yourself grace because you can't expect yourself to change overnight. That's ludicrous. And it will take time. And even a week is too short. It's too short, but at least it's a starting point that you can just kind of see a little bit, does this kind of work? They say that to form a new habit, it takes 21 days. That's 3 weeks, right? So if you can, do the 21. But if you want to do a little taster, then just try a week, see how it goes, then add another week, then add another week, and take it a week by week, and understand that you won't be perfect straight away. And again, it will take time. So sometimes you may get it and sometimes you may say something and it works. And then sometimes you kind of slip back a little bit because it's a bit of a push and pull until you get to where you want to get to. So you have to understand that you have been saying these negative words to yourself for X amount of years. This could be 5 years, 10 years, 25, 40 years plus, right? So it will take time for you to change the way that you think. And here's an analogy, right? Think of a tank of water, like a huge tank of water, right? Our mind is that tank. And some people's tanks, so their mind, their tank is filled with like negative words, negative self-talk. And then some are filled halfway, some are filled a quarter of the way, and some are filled to the brim, to the tippy top of just negativity. Imagine murky, dirty water. That's your negativity, right? So yours may be filled to the top, or yours maybe filled halfway with negativity, and then the other half is positives, right? So it's a bit of a mixture, or maybe 75-25%, of negative to positive and things like that. So those negative words are floating around in the tank. And certain individuals will have more negative than positive. So if you're doing the challenge of like 7 days or 21 days, you have to understand that the results that you see is dependent on how much negativity you have within that tank. If you have a little amount, you're probably going to see high results quickly. You're going to be like, wow, this works. If you don't have, if it's the opposite and you have lots of negativity, it's going to be more difficult and you might not see much movement. You might not see much things going on because you're so used to being negative, but it doesn't necessarily mean give up. And that's why I mention it, because now a week comes by, you don't see much and you think, well, this doesn't work. It's silly. And so what happens is you revert back to what you used to do because you're comfortable there. But it takes time, So to rid the murky water of negative self-talk, you have to fill the tank up with fresh water. And that fresh water is the positive talk that we've mentioned, the things that you write down and your environment as well. But just because we're talking about self-talk, I'm going to stick it to the topic of self-talk. But there are more things as well that you can do to help you in this regard, right? So the thing is, with our minds and with a tank, it's not a tank that you can just turn the valve and drain the water out, because our subconscious mind remembers things, right? So you can't necessarily get rid of the old program, but you can add a new line of code and you can add a new set of programs from those code, right? You can create a new set of programs from the code. And that fresh water, right? The positive self-talk, every time you say something or you feel it, because feeling is the important part, right? To say the words, it helps because the talking governs the feeling. So the words are very important, but the feeling is what you want to get to, because the feeling is when you start to shift the gear from gear 1 to gear 5, right? The talking and the words and the thoughts, that's gear 1. It gets the car kind of going, but it's slow. When you get to the feeling, you basically shift yourself to gear 5. Now you're going faster. Now things are working for you and they're snowballing, right? So every time you say something positive and you start to feel it, you begin to change the way that the water looks. And of course, if you fill a tank with fresh water and the tank is already full of negative water, what happens? It overflows a little bit. So when it's overflowing, both the positive and the negative water will spill over the edge. And what is basically happening is that the negativity is getting washed out, and sometimes the positivity may flow with it, but that's okay because you're going to fill it up with more positive things, right? And the negativity is basically flowing to the deeper levels of the subconscious. It's like it's not even there when that happens. It's like the deeper layer of the coding, the old program that doesn't really matter anymore. No one cares about that because you've now changed it in a way with new programs and new codes. And so the more you fill it, the more the water changes. And depending on the life each individuals have led would depend on how quickly that tank changes, right? And then another thing that you can consider is the intensity and frequency. If you are someone who constantly says negative things to yourself and you feel it intensely, then it's going to be hard to change that. But as you begin to say positive things about yourself, if you can feel it intensely and you say it frequently, you may change it a lot faster. Right? Because does it not make sense that if I'm saying something frequently and I'm saying it over and over and over and over and over again, it will approach and appear a lot faster than if I say something occasionally or once in a while and I don't really mean it as well. If I don't really mean it, that thing is barely going to come. So you've got to mean it. You've got to believe what you're saying. Right? And at first you may not necessarily believe it, but the more you say it is the more that you will start to believe it. And then I did say that I was going to focus on just self-talk, but a quick one to help you believe it is to also look at other people's stories if you want, like to hear their journey. Because when you start to hear those journeys, your mind is basically saying that, wow, this is real. Like this can be the same for me as well. And don't get jealous when you hear about it. Use it as a motivator to help you feel like, okay, cool, I can do this too. Right? And another thing is to surround yourself with the right type of people. But I'm not going to talk too much about that because, again, I'm focusing on self-talk. But there are few methods that you can essentially do to help you. So you also have to think about obstructions. So if you're someone that will say the positive words for a while, but then you go back to saying negative words, you may potentially slow the process down. It isn't to say that you have to be positive all the time, because even that's quite difficult. There's many things that happen to us just around us that we see, but it's having the awareness so you don't fall back into the negative patterns. Right? So if the negative thoughts or negative things come, you just let it flow away. You don't hold on to it. You don't latch onto it so that it then grows, because whatever you focus on grows. So if that negativity comes, you just say, okay, cool, bye. We don't want you here. No, thank you. There's no space. And then you can try and change it quickly with a positive thought. Counteract it. And then let that positive thought flow and attach instead and start to grow, right? So, understand as well that the water will probably never be crystal clear. However, it's about tipping the scale so that there's more positive, clean, fresh water in your tank than there is negative water, negative, dirty water. So like I've just mentioned, negative thoughts may come once in a while. But because you've practiced and practiced and practiced, right, you're now well equipped and you don't let that negativity stick around you for too long. So as you begin to do that, what do? You create a cycle of positivity. You create this snowballing effect of positive energy, positive vibrations, positive frequency. You begin to climb the ladder of positivity to the point that it's like the negative stuff can't even touch you anymore. It's like they're nowhere near you. They're still about. It doesn't mean that they don't exist, but they don't touch you. Just like how if you've been living your life in a negative state, the positivity is definitely there, but the positivity isn't reaching you because you're too immersed in the negative world. And so your perspective and the way that you view reality and the way that you view things will come from a negative standpoint, will come from a negative perspective, will come from a negative lens. So when you switch the lens, you switch your viewpoint, you switch your perspective, that's when you can now start to see life differently. And it's not going to be easy. If it was, I think everybody would be doing it. But it's worth it. Especially if you want to change your life to be something amazing, something better. If you want to see beautiful things, you have to start saying beautiful things. If you want to live a beautiful life, you have to start speaking that beauty into existence. Literally speak it into existence. It's the feeling, of course, that matters because, I'm not even going to get into what I was just about to say because we'll be here for a while. But feel yourself into that. Visualize. See yourself living the life that you want. And use the way that you talk to yourself, your self-talk, the thoughts that run through your mind and your brain, use that to help you create the reality that you want to see. The way that you think is so important. The way that you speak to yourself is so important. Like, again, think about that child. Imagine speaking to them day in, day out in a negative way. That child will be crippled, essentially. That child they'll be broken. And you wouldn't want that child to be broken. So why would you want yourself to be broken? Now think about it. Why would you want yourself to be broken? You wouldn't. So you have to start speaking positively to yourself. Just like you would, tell a child to speak positively, or you speak positively to your child because you want to uplift them. You want to affirm them. You want to tell them that they're amazing and that they're great and that they can do it. So tell yourself that. Show yourself that. Because when you now start to show yourself that as well, you can now help other people feel that way. Remember, living pieces. We're all living pieces and we all help influence and guide and uplift and grow each other. Or we can do the opposite and break each other down and tear each other down till there's nothing left? Wouldn't you want to grow in a society and an environment that is so positive and conducive? Wouldn't you? Because I would, right? So guys, that's just the episode on self-talk. I hope you enjoyed listening to this. I hope it is giving you some insight for you to now go away and be able to actually do those steps. Of course, there's more, but it's an awareness type thing, the beginning of certain things. If you found this video, not a video, I don't know why I said video. Even the way I started saying video, I was like, no, it's not that. After I literally just said listening. But if you enjoyed this podcast and you enjoyed listening to this episode, then do share it with someone. If you want to share your comments, you can do that. Yeah, I think that's about it. Don't really have anything else to say. And I hope you guys are blessed wherever you are. And yeah, that's it. I've been Ruth. This has been Living Pieces. Together creating a masterpiece. Yeah. So guys, until I see you next, or you hear from me next, stay blessed, don't stress, and I will catch you after the test. Bye!